part 2 of the Be Brave workshop, where we are becoming empowered to overcome our fears that are getting in the way of us doing what we want to do, living our authentic lives, accomplishing our goals, and living in our dream, right? So I am talking about the 7 most common fears. And in session 3, I'm going to talk about fear in general and how to approach fear and what to do about it. And since it's going to be on Small Step Saturday, I, of course, am going to give you a small step exercise that you can incorporate in your life to manage fear. Remember that there is a workbook linked below, and it is totally free. It is a companion to this workshop, and I hope you grab it and enjoy it. You'll also get on my newsletter list if you do so, and so you'll get weekly encouraging emails from me. Of course, you can unsubscribe anytime you want. Totally cool. But get your workbook so that you have it and you can take notes as we go along. So today in session 2, which I promise will be shorter than session 1, we are going to be talking about fear of rejection and abandonment, fear of the unknown, and fear of decision making. And I'm going to give you some strategies to deal with these fears. Okay, so the first fear we're going to talk about today is fear of rejection and abandonment. And I have to tell you, this is a big one. This one is very, very prevalent in my life, and it is pervasive across all different things in my life. So this isn't just about relationships. This has been in my life for as long as I can remember, and I had a profound fear of rejection and abandonment related to my grades in school or my business ventures. And it obviously rippled into fear of OPO and fear of the unknown. And it all just became kind of a bundled mess. Fear of rejection and abandonment might seem less legitimate than other fears. And a lot of times we really can be hard on ourselves about this particular fear because we want to believe, like, I don't care. I don't care. If they don't accept me, then it doesn't matter anyways. But here's the truth. Humans are hardwired as pack animals. This is actually instrumental in the survival of humans as a species since the beginning of humanity. And so the fear of rejection and abandonment is incredibly real, because while today you may feel like you could be an island unto itself, remember that there was a time in human history where the worst possible thing, the greatest punishment that could be doled out, wasn't death, it was exile. Okay. So fear of rejection and abandonment is completely legitimate. And if you have found yourself trying to invalidate that fear, I just want to tell you that doesn't work. And it's partly because your brain knows that that fear has legitimacy. So, how does it present itself, and what can we do about it? Fear of rejection and abandonment can present itself in any area of our lives, but the most profound ways in which it presents itself is in fear of conflict, where we are very, very conflict avoidant, or the habit of people pleasing. A lot of times, these two specific things are rooted in, again, our childhood. And we felt like we had to perform, or we had to be pleasing, or we had to bottle up how we were feeling because it was not safe. We could be rejected or abandoned. We may have lived in an environment where saying, hey, I'm not cool with that, or that doesn't feel right to me, would create explosive behaviors or rejection. And sometimes we fail to recognize that cold shouldering, or the shut you out methods of discipline that were sometimes implemented in our homes, or that we saw in relationships. For example, our parents get into a fight and then they're not speaking to each other for days. That as children, that is incredibly threatening. We are actually, as children, incredibly dependent upon our parents. So the idea that they could cut us off, even as teenagers, the idea that your own parents who you rely on could cut you off, or could stop speaking to you, or could cold shoulder you, is incredibly, incredibly threatening. And when we experience that, we tend to carry that. And sometimes, by the way, we will even do it. We will even actually engage in that when we have disagreements with our partner or even when we're disappointed in our children, because this is a habit that has carried forward. And as we do it, we are actually reinforcing our own fear of rejection and abandonment. And so, obviously, step one in overcoming this fear or facing this fear is to stop using rejection or abandonment as a weapon. Stop doing it. I understand that it might feel more comfortable when you're angry or upset to just stop speaking to the person. I completely get that. I partially get that because in these environments, oftentimes it's not safe to express your feelings. And so, if you are feeling angry, if you are feeling hurt, it might feel safer to just not talk to the other person. It's really important when we need a break to actually say, hey, I don't want to say something that I'm going to regret. I don't want to be reactive in this situation. I just need a break. I will come back. Okay. And if you are a person who fears rejection and abandonment, it is also important to be able to say to the other person you feel fear will reject or abandon you, will you come back? Okay. Now, this should work with people who are safe. And when people are unsafe in our lives, we actually need to create a space there. We need to back away in a way that makes us feel safe. If we are in a very, very close relationship with someone who is not trustworthy with the question, will you come back? We need to back out. We need to back away. We need to step back in that relationship. It's very important that we're not putting our trust where it hasn't been earned or it doesn't belong. And listen, I don't care who the person is. I have to tell you that. I do not care who the person is. I've done this with a lot of people in my life because I know that they are not safe people. I know that there is a difference between the hypervigilant fear of abandonment or rejection, that gut feeling, and the knowledge that the person that you are in a relationship with will bolt. Okay. That as soon as something gets uncomfortable, as soon as something gets difficult, as soon as you say something they don't like, as soon as you tell them no, they're out. And I personally keep people who are in that category in the outer circle. And the only way for them to come back in is for them to show me that that is not something that they're going to do. That is a very real thing. So create boundaries in relationships with people that actually do that, that have actually shown you that. Create those boundaries. Being able to say no in a relationship is incredibly important. And I don't even care what you're saying no about. Okay. And if you fear abandonment or if you fear rejection, it can be really, really helpful to start saying no about the little things. It can be very, very helpful to start having conversations about things that don't feel loaded, that are not loaded, right? And that way you can kind of gauge and sharpen your saw or get ready, prepare yourself, create a record of wins about alleviating that fear. And so, what do I mean by that? Well, if we're trying to resolve the fear of abandonment and the fear of rejection, one of the best things that we can do is put ourselves out there in just a little way, right? Um, a lot of times, what happens is we build it up as a fear, and then we push down our feelings, and then we blow up, and then we create a situation where we actually walk away first, or where we force the other person out because we have done something so volatile, so threatening, so outrageous or abusive potentially that the other person has to leave. Okay. Then we know um, that we kind of are responsible for that. We set that up. So instead of doing that, it's really important if you have a fear of abandonment or a fear of rejection to slowly, in small ways, with the safest people in your life, give them the cracked door, meaning do the thing that you're afraid will make them abandon you or that you're afraid will make them reject you. And I know that that sounds terrifying. So I don't mean have a ultimatum conversation with your partner about a big thing in your relationship that's been bothering you for 10 years. Okay? If you are concerned about conflict, starting a big conflict or opening the door for a big conflict that you then fear will lead to rejection or abandonment is actually going to heighten that fear. It's going to make the situation more volatile. But could you say to your partner, no, I don't want to make dinner tonight, right? No, I don't want to go to the work Christmas party. You know what? I actually really don't like that you don't put your dishes in the dishwasher. Okay. I'm talking about little things. And why do I say that? For some of you who are listening to this, you're like, why would you not say that to your partner? Because if you have a fear of, it's not that you think that they will abandon or reject you if you ask them to put their dish in the dishwasher. It's that you are afraid that you will be too much. They will see you as too much. They will see you as difficult. As this pattern continues, they'll be like, my spouse is so demanding. My partner is so demanding. Okay. I just can't even deal with this anymore. I'm out. And so you are always trying to not be the squeaky wheel. And that means you don't get your needs met. So if you have a fear of rejection or abandonment, rather than going all in, okay, one, I want you to be really conscientious about the areas in your life where you push people to reject you and stop it. Okay. Stop it. I want you to recognize that those areas where you're pushing people to reject you are in large part caused by the fact that you're not dealing with the little things because of your need to people please or because of your fear of rejection and abandonment. You're not dealing with those little things and they're building up and then you are acting out. You can't control their behavior, but you certainly can control your own. And take the little steps to start showing up a little more authentically, right? I like to remind myself, and sometimes when I'm struggling this, I'll put little post-its around my house. That's like kind of my jam. But I like to remind myself that I can be me or I can belong. I like to remind myself that the only person who stuck with me for the rest of my life is me, and that it's more important that I take care of myself and please myself than anyone else. I like to remind myself that if I'm too much for someone else, they should actually go find less. Okay. I give a lot in my relationships. I show up in my relationships in a big way, right? I love with my whole heart. And I deserve that in return. And if someone else is not equipped to give that to me or not willing to give that to me, honestly, it would be better if they left. It would be better if they left. And I own my own behavior enough to back away or leave myself before I settle for that. Making that decision in your life will change everything. The second fear we're going to talk about is fear of the unknown. And fear of the unknown is huge for people like me who are really hypervigilant. I like to know it all. I want to know every little thing. And it is so pervasive. Fear of the unknown is so pervasive. I'm 100% convinced that this particular fear is fueling an entire industry and causing tons of money to be spent every year on psychics and tarot card readers and mediums. And in addition to that, the fear of the unknown is a huge factor in many institutions that most of us are engaged in. So, trying to provide answers to what we don't know, or trying to provide guidance for what we don't know, or trying to provide a look at the future so that we do know is a huge, huge deal. One of the things that's helped me most with fear of the unknown is an awareness or a trust in the idea that I will be equipped to deal with whatever it is I don't know when I get there, right? I currently can brag about the fact that I have survived 100% of my hardest days and most difficult challenges, have survived them all. Some of them, I'm going to just be honest here, some of them really, really sucked. Okay. I will say that the idea that you grow from every challenge or you grow from every difficult situation is BS. You can grow in peace, you can grow in challenge, you can learn new things when you are having a totally awesome time, also. So, no, we don't have to look for a gift in every single challenge, but we do have to have an awareness that we can actually navigate what comes next. Why do I say this? Because when we know we can navigate what comes next, it makes us feel a lot less afraid of the unknown. Even if we can reveal it, even if we can discover what the unknown actually is, we are not currently equipped to handle it. And to be completely honest, it would probably just scare the living daylights out of us, right? We have to live in this present moment, collect the tools and the skills and the knowledge we need before we can face the unknown. And that's just the truth. The unknown is completely unknowable. And trying to figure out what it is and trying to create a strategy for every possibility is literally impossible. What you can, however, do is reflect upon how much of what is unknown can you personally impact, right? This matters a lot. And again, I'll go back to my example from session 1, right? There is no way for me to know if I will ever be diagnosed with breast cancer in my life. There's no way. I cannot know that. That unknown sometimes scares people into inaction. What I know that I can do in this present moment about it is give myself the best shot at early diagnosis. Because what I know is that early diagnosis saves lives. And what I know is that early diagnosis typically has best outcomes with most options for treatments. That's what I know, right? So when I start to become really afraid of this unknown thing, right? Will this happen? Could this happen? I have to bring myself back into the present moment and say, is this a real possibility, right? For me, this is a real possibility. Now, for me, there's a lot of medical possibilities that aren't very likely, partly because of my age. I'm 50 years old. I'm not very likely at 50 to develop certain diseases that are commonly developed in your 30s. Correct? At 50 years old, I'm not as likely to be diagnosed, for example, with MS. I'm not as likely to develop schizophrenia. Those usually develop when you're younger than I am now. So if I was really concerned and I was scared of the unknown, oh my goodness, what if someday I get schizophrenia, for example? Which, by the way, does have a genetic marker and it is present in my family. So that is something I was concerned about when I was younger, right? If I think about that now, then I remind myself, well, Cassie, that's not very likely. You're outside of the typical age that schizophrenia first presents. So that's not a very likely thing for you to develop at the age you currently are. Now, I may go into, is the person in my family, were they my age? Were they younger when they were diagnosed? Et cetera, et cetera. They were younger than me, by the way. And so that will also help allay that fear of the unknown, right? But if I'm looking at fear of the unknown as something that really is possible, then what I have to do is bring it back to present. Is there something I can change in my behavior right now to mitigate this fear of this unknown thing? Yes, there is. What is that thing? I can get screenings. I can be really diligent about health management. I could potentially read books about various things I could do for prevention. I could look at the warning signs. For example, alcohol consumption is a factor, and I could stop drinking, right? There are things that I can do. And so when I look at the unknown things that I am afraid of, again, thinking about, is this unknown likely? And if so, in this present moment, what can I do? And what can I do always needs to be about me. Okay. Personally, what can I do? Because remember, I can't control the behaviors of other people. Okay. A lot of times when we get hung up in fear of the unknown, it's about other people. Okay. It's stuff that you cannot control. So, a prevalent or ever present, I would say, fear of the unknown related to my life also is that I have children who struggle with mental health issues and substance use disorders and eating disorders, right? So, I do have the fear that they will relapse. Why? These are diseases. So I am just going to put this out there for anybody who is not aware of this. These are diseases, and these are diseases in which there can be relapse, right? So obviously, the unknown about will my children still be okay 10 years from now, right? Is a very big thing. But what can I do? Right? What can I do? Here are the things that I know I can do. I can be a good support system for them. I can create a healthy environment for them, right? I can show up in a positive way in their life. What I can't do is enable them. What I can't do is eliminate all of my boundaries as a person to accommodate. What I can't do is control them. What I can't do is micromanage them. What I can't do, okay, I can't change their behavior or their choices. The only thing that I can do is create support. That's what I can do in this present moment. And then I have to let go of that. Why do I have to let go of that? Well, in this instance, it's very clear why I have to let go of that. Because the fear of that unknown could dramatically impact the way I can show up and be supportive and be helpful. In addition to that, the fear of this unknown could literally preoccupy everything in my present, right? One of the best ways to address fear of the unknown is to remind yourself to stay present in this moment. In this moment, right now. This is the only moment you have. Literally, this is the only moment you have. And so when you start thinking about, well, what if this happened? Well, what if that happened? What goes on there is you are interfering with the present moment, trying to live forward into the future. The best way to overcome that is to come back to the present moment. Well, what can I do about it right now? Is there something I can do? Is there something that I can be doing right now to improve to make it more likely, I guess, that what I want to happen will happen? Okay. Because I can't control it. And when fear of the unknown comes to a place of stopping you from pursuing your goals or your dream or your vision or starting that business or um, getting married or leaving your relationship, then I think that you really need to go back into session one and look again at fear of success and fear of failure, right? And lean into this next piece, which is fear of decision making. We frequently don't make decisions because we are afraid of the consequence of that decision. We don't know what will happen when we make that decision, right? We're afraid we're going to make the wrong decision. So, to address fear of decision making, I simply remind myself of this absolute fact. Not making a decision is a decision. And not making a decision is the decision that has the worst consequence. Why? Because it takes me out of the driver's seat in my own life. It makes me a bystander. It takes me from the opportunity for authorship in my life. When things happen because I didn't make a decision, I then have to deal with the consequences of that without being equipped in any way to deal with it. If I'm the one who made the decision, I will make the decision based on my own knowledge, my own awareness, my own comfort zone, my own, right? I will make that decision based on those things. And even if the decision is the wrong decision, because of the considerations that went into making it, I am far more equipped to deal with the consequence. When I don't make a decision, there will still be consequences. There will still be ramifications. Okay. And I want to just put this out there. I'm going to talk about this a lot as I get more into content about relationships. But a lot of times when we don't make the decisions, it's for the purpose of absolving ourselves from responsibility and having the ability to blame someone else. When we don't make decisions, a lot of times it's for the purpose of being able to hold on to our victim status. Victim status gives us a lot of leeway, a lot of special consideration, right? And instead of having to say, I made that decision and it was the wrong decision, and now that I know that, I'm going to take responsibility for that and I'm going to make adjustments from what I have learned here. What we can say instead is, it's your fault. It's their fault. Somebody else did this. The problem when we do that is you haven't even climbed into the back seat. Okay. You are in the trunk in your life and you're just letting whatever random person hops into the driver's seat drive that car. Okay. And you are actually responsible for having done that. This is a really tough pill to swallow. And so it's almost hard for me to say it to you. Okay. Okay. You not making the decision is the reason why this is happening to you. And that means you, in fact, are responsible. Okay. Now, don't get this twisted before anybody blows up the comments. Do not get this twisted. I am not saying that victims are responsible for what has happened to them. That is not what I'm saying. There are situations in which we are victims where bad things happen to people and they are not responsible and it sucks. Okay. I personally have been the victim of sexual assault, of domestic violence, I have been in the victim situation. I have been. Those things did not happen because I didn't make a decision. Those things didn't happen because I made the wrong decision. Okay. This is always problematic when we blame the victim. This happened because somebody else made a horrible decision. This happened because somebody else chose to do something that is wrong, that we can all agree is wrong. And there is nothing that is going to make me take responsibility for their decision to victimize someone, to hurt somebody else. Okay. But when you don't make decisions in your life for yourself that are yours to make, you are not the victim. You are the person who actually let this happen. When you, for example, refuse to engage in the financial decisions in your household, if you have financial catastrophe in your household, you are partially responsible for that. even if you don't know anything about money. You are still partially responsible for that because you disengaged. You let that decision be made for you. You let this happen, and in that way, you are compliant. Now, on the other hand, if you are in a relationship with a person who will not allow you to be engaged in financial decisions, who will not allow you to have financial insight, you are in a relationship that is financially abusive. This is a type of emotional abuse, and this is a very serious problem. And you are a victim. You truly are a victim. When you are a victim, you did not choose. You did not choose to disengage. You did not choose for this to happen. You did not choose. Okay. When you make the decision not to decide, when you make the decision to relinquish what is yours to someone else, you are responsible for those consequences. And not making decisions is a decision. Sometimes it's a decision that comes from self-doubt. Sometimes it's a decision that comes from the inability to forgive ourselves or the inability to trust ourselves. Sometimes it's a decision that comes from growing up in an environment where you weren't allowed to make decisions or where your confidence was really attacked, right? And negatively impacted. Sometimes the inability or the fear of making decisions and the struggle to make decisions comes from the fact that you grew up in a household where you were modeled, where it was modeled to you that that's not your place, right? I have a friend, for example, um, who for years in their marriage did not make any financial decisions or have any awareness and didn't want to. And the reason was that they grew up in a household where that's just not a woman's place. That's not what women do, right? The man handles the money. And when the financial situation became catastrophic, they did not have any awareness that was going to happen. Now, this particular friend completely avoided victim status in every possible way and completely blamed themselves because they have struggles with self punishment. That is a different conversation for a different day. But a lot of times, what people do in that situation is they say, well, I'm not the one who made that decision, so it's not my fault. Okay. So we're not going to engage in that, but we're also not going to engage in beating ourselves up. If you've been avoiding making decisions, I highly recommend you start. Take on something really small, okay? Take on a little thing. And if part of why you struggle to make decisions is because you have decision fatigue, then I'm going to ask you to relinquish something little, okay? If your thing is the opposite thing, like it's very hard for me to make this big decision because I feel like I'm making 5 million decisions. I feel like all the decisions are on me. Then somebody else needs to decide what's for dinner tonight, okay? The biggest consequence there is you're not going to like it. You're not going to like what's for dinner. Relinquish little decisions if you feel like your plate is too full and that's why you struggle to make decisions. But if you're avoiding decisions, it's time for you to actually take on making some of the smaller decisions in your household. In the next session, I'm going to talk about how to address fear in general. I'm also going to give you a tactical exercise that you can do to address any fears that you're having. And I highly recommend if you feel really overburdened by fear, you feel like this is a big obstacle in your life, that you implement this technique in your life every single day for at least a week until you start to really get it down as a pattern of how you address fear as it comes up. I love giving multiple different ways for people to embrace content because I know everybody learns differently. And that's why you've got a video, you've got a workbook, and I'm going to give you a tactical exercise. By the way, that's also what you can expect in my course content as well. Remember to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of my content, which is all about life and mindset management. And remember, you are absolutely amazing and you deserve to live the life you've been dreaming about. Don't let fear stand in your way. Bye, everyone.